I was a lactation consultant that managed an NGO that dealt with breastfeeding awareness campaigns, breast milk donation drives, birthing, pregnancy, and childbirth related workshops. All of that when my daughter, who was 4 years at that time, she is 7 years now, she started asking questions about her body, others' bodies, periods, childbirth, and all of these questions that children that age are supposed to ask. Though I was being open with her and helping her as much as possible, I wasn't sure whether I was on track. Once it so happened that I said the F word out aloud and she asked me what it meant. That got me thinking, if a child observes everything that happens around them, then as parents we need to stay one step ahead in parenting, especially in today's times. I decided I need to equip myself to handle the most vulnerable moments in a parent's life, which is imparting sex education. That led me to where I am today, conducting online and offline sex education workshops for Indian parents so that they can start the sex talks at home, not just with confidence, but with lots of fun. When parents ask me when sex ed begins, I say 6 months. They're like, what? 6 months? Did you mean 6 years? I say no. 6 months. And they're like, what does a 6-month-old know? What can you even teach a 6-month-old? That is exactly why I am into sex education. To make sure that parents understand that sex ed starts early. Sex ed is not only about sex and about abuse and about ill effects of porn. But sex ed is a comprehensive subject that deals with so many topics. So how can sex ed be a shush topic when you can clearly see that it deals with life itself? Now let's see how sex ed starts at 6 months. According to the World Health Organization recommendations, a baby should be exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of its life. Some parents will be giving formula milk, by the way. But after 6 months, you can start complementary foods or solid foods. Now, a baby that is being directly breastfed can never be overfed because it knows exactly how much milk it needs and it knows where to stop. They can regulate milk intake and can tell you when they are full, or when they feel satiety, they just stop drinking, and they have this capacity to feel satiety even when you introduce them to solid foods. But when a baby or a toddler says, no, I'm done eating, how many parents are actually okay with it? For the past 7 years, I'm taking classes on children's eating habits and teaching baby-led weaning techniques to parents. Thousands of parents who attend my classes report that they are not okay when their child says no. They use either force feeding or distraction tactics like showing screens, or even some people beg, plead, threaten, or even compare their kids with other kids to somehow make them eat beyond the point of satiety or fullness. This they are doing without knowing that they are breaking the very skill that the child uses to establish body boundaries or body autonomy. When a child says no, it is actually respecting its own body signals and body boundaries. We need the child to have this very same skill when they are feeling unsafe or uncomfortable or threatened by somebody or something. They have to follow their body cues and react and respond accordingly in these kind of situations, right? But what will happen if we keep on disrespecting their no's and their ability to establish body boundaries? We are actually telling them that you do not know about your body. An adult can take decisions on behalf of your body. We are breaking that very foundation of sex education, which is consent education, where we want the child to understand that you are the boss of your body and you have the right to say no to any kind of touch or any kind of unsafe, uncomfortable behavior. Today, if we look among ourselves, how many of us know when to stop eating? How many of us have control over quantity? How many of us are intuitive eaters? How many of us even chew food well? In fact, most of us are emotional eaters today because of what was done in our childhood or in our formative years. We were all not allowed to follow our body signals and regulate our food intake. So when I say sex ed starts at 6 months, I don't mean make a 6-month-old baby sit in front of you and then teach certain concepts to the baby. The ability to say no or the inbuilt capacity to understand boundaries and body autonomy is already there in that baby. So sex ed is more for the parents to be aware of these things so that they don't end up breaking or destroying this beautiful system like it happened to most of us. It is indeed true that sex ed begins at the dining table. Sex ed in non-sexual situations. This brings us to the fact that sex ed is not only about sex. For example, babies go through a specific milestone when they are 7 to 8 months of age. Do you know what this is? This is called stranger anxiety. This is a kind of distress that babies feel when they go to someone new, someone other than the primary 2 to 3 caregivers that they are seeing on a day-to-day basis. What do you think parents will do if they do not understand these things? They'll obviously hand over the baby to somebody else with whom the baby is not comfortable to go to, and the baby will cry, right? I see this happening a lot as a lactation consultant when I deal with babies within families. The same thing happens when these babies grow older and when guests come home. Do you all remember what used to happen when guests come home? We are supposed to dance for them, sing for them, perform for them, even if we have no interest to do so. Again, we need to be aware that boundary education, which is the most fundamental part of sex education, begins with all these non-sexual situations at home. In my home, if guests are visiting and my daughter doesn't want to sit with them, she is free to go into her room. There is no rule that these guests have to be entertained because my child's comfort takes top priority. This skill in her that she uses to express her discomfort will help her from staying away from sexual abuse tomorrow, because she won't be okay with anything that makes her feel uncomfortable. She will be so aware of her body boundaries and the signals that her body is giving her, because in her own home, these boundaries are respected. So she will demand this respect from anyone, anywhere. And I'd like to remind you that boundaries are not just physical. There are energy boundaries, money boundaries, sexual boundaries, financial boundaries, emotional boundaries, even family boundaries. Parents need to respect children's boundaries so that they grow up into adults who can establish healthy boundaries, not just in their relationships, but also in their work life. No and stop are two different things. Not many think of it, but then the skill set needed to say no and the skill set needed to say stop are different. For a child to say no, it's actually a little easy because the act has not yet begun. But to say stop, the act has already begun. So it is a little difficult, or the child needs to be much more in control of its body signals to be able to say stop. Also, if they get scared and they freeze, it's going to be even difficult. So what can parents do? Don't wait for sexual situations to come up to train your child on all these things. For simple things, day-to-day activities like tickling your child, the moment the child says stop, you have to stop. Do parents understand boundaries? I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't say anything about sex or baby making or good touch in this video. That was mainly to show you that sex ed is a lot more than just sex. It is something that takes place in our day-to-day lives. Whenever we watch a TV program, whenever guests come home, every little conversation that we have at home, every time you sit for a meal, every time you engage in playtime with your kid, there is something related to consent or boundaries or body autonomy that's going on. So what if you have a family member, say your mother-in-law or even your mother, who constantly body shames you? Now, I get a lot of youngsters reporting to me that they get body shamed and slut shamed by their own parents, relatives, or even teachers. Now, what if somebody constantly body shames you? How do you react to that? The way you react to these people determines how much of healthy boundaries or loose boundaries or rigid boundaries you have. Your response and reactions to these kind of situations is actually education to your child. So ask yourself, do you understand healthy boundaries so that your child can just learn, watch and observe from you? Now imagine how many similar situations will be happening around the child. What if everybody is watching a TV show and then your dad suddenly starts slut shaming the TV personality? What if a sanitary napkin ad comes on screen and then somebody quickly changes the channel? Or what about everybody getting ready for a wedding and people commenting how ugly the bride looks or how much dowry the guy would be getting and how lucky he was? That's why I told you, you don't have to make your child sit in front of you and then you don't have to teach them all these concepts. Right from birth, they are listening to a lot of such things. They are seeing a lot of things. They are observing a lot of conversations and incidents and experiences around them. That will give them a lot of ideas about body shaming, biases, prejudices, social issues, emotions, healthy and unhealthy relationships, and so much more. Parents who are ignorant and oblivious about this information will think that sex ed is something that needs to be incorporated when the child is 8 years or 9 years or even when they are in their teenage, and then they'll keep waiting for the right time to come. But what will happen? By that time, the child would have seen thousands of such situations and would have learnt a lot of concepts from those situations. This is exactly why my sex ed workshops focus on helping the parent understand that they have to unlearn a lot of things before they start imparting any kind of education, and that they have to understand that sex ed must start as early as possible. Sex and sexuality. All these things brings us to the difference between sex and sexuality. What is sex? It is generally considered an act, but sexuality is a broader term that encompasses so many elements and not just intercourse. We are sexual beings and our sexuality starts at birth and ends in death. Our sexuality includes our biological sex, gender identity, personal value systems, beliefs, sexual orientation, gender expression, our personality, our body, sense of self, the worth and value we give ourselves, sexual health and hygiene, our understanding of emotions and relationships, the way we communicate and socialize, our personal experiences, and so much more. Do you know that babies touch their genitals when they are in the uterus? Yes. This gratification behavior has been observed by scientists in utero. This explains very clearly that we are all sexual even if we decide to never have sex in our lives. And that brings us to the conclusion that sex ed is definitely not what we got in biology, because it is not only about reproduction. You want some easy tips to incorporate sex education in Indian households? Take notes. Always talk about body, puberty, periods, childbirth with a neutral expression and a neutral tone of voice. Do not connect any shame, stigma, or embarrassment to these subjects, and please don't use any nicknames for genitalia. Always, always respect your child's no. Now, if you respect your child's no's, bonus point, they will start respecting your no's. Do not ever force your children to sit with people whom they are uncomfortable with. Remember, they are people that are important to you, not to your child. When you sit as a family for meal times, do not show any kind of distraction, or please don't force your child to eat beyond fullness. Whenever possible, ask your child permission for hugs, kisses, or tickles. Let them understand that even significant others will have to ask them permission. So what will happen? They will expect this respect and permission from anybody around them. Tell your children very clearly that when it's a matter of safety or hygiene or health, you will take the decision on behalf of them. For example, strapping their car seat on or holding their hands when you cross the road. These things, you will take a decision. Always give them control while they are taking small decisions. For example, choosing an outfit when you go for a walk. The ability to take small decisions when they are little will help them tremendously when they are taking bigger decisions later in life. Never ever tell your child to stop crying or to not be angry or frustrated. Try to understand how their underdeveloped limbic system works and help them regulate emotions. A child that is taught to regulate their emotions will become an emotionally regulated adult. Now, point to be noted, are you an adult that knows how to regulate your emotions, or are you somebody that just snaps at your child or yells at them for silly things? Which means you need to start with your own emotional regulation. Be aware that every conversation at home is being watched by the child. Do not inject any kind of shame, biases, taboo, or stigma while talking about any concept. Do you want to raise a good citizen? Then let kindness and respect begin at home. According to me, imparting sex education at home is exactly like homeschooling. A lot of parents think homeschooling is very difficult because I don't have all answers. How will I do homeschooling? But fact is, you don't have to have all answers. Even in sex ed, we don't have to know everything. If we have that open mind to read more, learn more, and if we are curious to understand a lot of these concepts, then it's easy to answer children's questions. Only thing we need to do is never snub them, never tell them to stop asking these questions, or don't criticize them or make them feel embarrassed for asking questions. Become your child's search engine before the internet or pornography takes over. It is really easy to create a sex-positive environment at home. Make sure children watch us and learn consent, boundaries, and body autonomy. Make sure there is space for open communication where the child feels free to talk about anything under the sun. Make sure there are sex ed books to help. All this is going to help parents navigate puberty with a lot of ease and comfort. Remember, only if childhood and adolescence is handled well, you will become an adult that can be calm, happy, clear, and autonomous to make decisions, draw healthy boundaries, identify red flags in a relationship, incorporate healthy communication patterns, have confidence in exploring their sexuality, and can become emotionally regulated adults at some point of time. And make sure you become the parent that you wished for when you were younger. Always remember that we are not raising children. We are raising tomorrow's adults who can create a world that is loving, kind, safe, respectful, and sex positive. We have the key to that world, and that key is sexuality health education. Thank you.